Anna. We have apologies from Councillor Colley, and Councillor Devine is substituting Councillor Colley. And can I also welcome Alison Japp along to the first meeting as one of the Health Board members. Are there any other apologies that I don't have notice of? No. Does anyone have any declarations of interest in relation to any matter on today's agenda? Seeing anyone? Great. Can we move then to the minute of our last meeting held on 5th September? There's rather a lot to go through page by page, so I'm just going to ask if anyone has any proposed amendments or anything they're unhappy about with the minute. No, can we accept that then as a true record of our last meeting? Okay, thank you. Can we move on then to the action log? Is there anything there that needs picked up here?
Nothing that's due to be picked up at the meeting today. There'll be forthcoming information to future meetings of the IJB around these items.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? I can still see in my computer the online members, so if you do want to speak, please just do put your hand up and I'll bring you. Okay, can we move on to item 5 then, the Chief Officer's report?
Thank you, and I'm pleased to present this meeting's Chief Officer report. There's a number of positive highlights in the report, which I'll go through. I'm not going to go through the report verbatim, but just to pull out a few things. So you'll notice that we've started to include information around children's and justice social work, some updates. So while those services have yet to be formally delegated to the IJB following the approval of the integration scheme, they are now operationally managed through the Health and Social Care Partnership. So we felt it'd be useful to start to bring information on children's and justice social work through to the IJB. So there's information on a recent engagement event that took place, and the information on the annual report for the Integrated Children's Services Plan, which has recently been submitted to the Scottish Government. And for your information at the appendix, we have attached the Integrated Children's Services Plan. We're delighted that our mobile emergency care service, our MEX team, has been shortlisted as a Scottish finalist in the 2025 Great British Care Awards. So these awards celebrate excellence across social care sector, highlighting the dedication of individuals and organisations who deliver outstanding care. So we're really proud of our MEX team for being selected as one of the finalists, and they'll find out later on in this month whether or not they have been successful. But I think being selected as a finalist is a major achievement in its own right. So well done to the team, and absolutely recognise how valued the work is to the people who need it in Falkirk. Next item is also a really good news story. Grahamston House Care Home was recently inspected by the Care Inspectorate and received very good grades across all the 3 indicators assessed. The Care Inspectorate commented on the significant range of activities that are ongoing, and specifically around the work that's been ongoing around reducing fall-related injuries over the last year. And colleagues who sit on the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee will recall that we brought a deep dive information in relation to the impact of that really positive project that's been ongoing. In terms of regional updates, again, we've got some really good news that NHS Forth Valley escalation status has changed to level stage 2 under the NHS Scotland Support and Intervention Framework for Governance, Leadership and Culture. And that's down to a huge amount of work across everybody involved around those areas. So it's a really significant milestone. We're really proud of that. The work obviously continues. Absolutely, we're not complacent around that, but it's a really significant milestone. In terms of from a regional basis in relation to winter planning, just to provide that assurance so that winter planning work is ongoing from a local and a regional perspective, to make sure that we are well prepared to deal with what might come over the winter period, which we're now into, of course. From a national perspective, there was a recent Carers Roundtable event that took place, and myself and the somebody from Charlene from the Falkirk and Clackmannanshire Carer Centre came along, and one of the examples of good practice that was shared was the support that takes place in Falkirk around our carers representative programme and the carers representative that we have here on the board, but also elsewhere across our planning groups. Finally, I wanted to highlight that was the Scottish Parliament Criminal Justice Committee and our prison healthcare lead, Leona Paget, provided evidence at that committee on the 17th of September as part of an expert panel for Criminal Justice Committee, and there's more information on that in the report. So I'm happy to take any questions about any aspect of the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Very full report as always. Any questions from members? Sharon.
Hello, thank you, Chair. I would just like to highlight 2 points on the report. It's one about the mix, which was talked about the mix system, which has been quite good. And we received positive feedback from the carers that it's been good. But the only thing that's been a negative is the charges that are with it. They're complaining about charges, especially the elderly that are struggling with the costs. And then the other one is about the round table that was had in Edinburgh, and COSLA are trying to take it on as something that will be endorsed, the Carers Project, which is quite good. Part of the Carers Project, that's why I'm here. So that's quite good that it will be rolled on. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roger.
Thanks, Chair. Just about the Grahamson House, I go into my job at all the care homes in Falkirk, and would certainly recommend Grahamson House as being right up there and above the standard that I see in everywhere else. So I congratulate those in Grahamson House for such a good level of care that they're providing there, which I've had feedback from a lot of parents, children, family of those there who have agreed with me that they're very grateful for the care they get. Thanks.
Yeah, very much endorse that. It's good to have those positive reports coming through. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll move on. Thanks, Gail. Item 6 then is yeah, so the recommendation is to comment and note the report. So we've commented. And then if we can move on to item 6, which is the 26-27 business case and medium-term financial plan. Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 6 is the updated business case and 5-year financial plan, setting out the known pressures at this stage, funding assumptions, and next steps towards setting the IJB's budget for next year and the planning for the medium term. This will be a rolling 5-year plan, which will be moved on each year moving forward and linked to the new strategic plan, which is under development as well. As set out in the budget strategy, approved at the IJB last time, anticipated funding from NHS Forth Valley is in line with current year funding plus any agenda for change uplift. It is also assumed at this stage that any financial effect of the reduced working week will be fully funded. Funding from Falkirk Council is assumed at the same level as this financial year, with a pass-through of any additional funding in relation to living wage and free personal and nursing care. It is also assumed at this stage that pay awards for this year and next above the original 3% assumption will be funded. However, this has not yet been confirmed and would have to have final agreement from the Council. The key budget announcement will now take place later than expected on the 13th of January, and this later date will cause some challenges for partners for budget setting, but IJB assumptions have been shared with partners at this stage for their input. This paper also sets out the current known pressures for children and families' budgets, but does not incorporate prison healthcare at this stage, which will be included at the next update. The IJB agreed a 3-year medium-term financial plan at its meeting in March, and the table at 4.6 in the paper shows the overall position at that stage. This showed that there was still an overall budget gap over 3 years of 1.158 million. For this financial year, this included a gap of 3.962 million, and our partners have agreed to fund this gap if required on a one-off basis if required. Current projections to be presented next on the agenda would mean that the full amount will be required this year. Since setting the budget strategy, work has been underway to update the known pressures information to incorporate any emerging issues and expand for the additional 3 years. It is assumed that any set-aside pressures will be addressed by NHS Forth Valley as in previous years. Therefore, these are not included in the table shown at 4.26 at this stage. Appendix 1 and the summary at 4.26 show the current known position in relation to budget pressures for the 5-year period. For 26.7 and 27.8, which were included in our agreed plan in March, the table at 4.27 shows the changes applied since that time, which now contribute to the overall pressures of 19.1 million over 5 years. This figure excludes children and families and prison healthcare at this stage. The main changes for the next 2 financial years is an estimate of the gap between living wage funding from Scottish Government and the actual predicted cost of uplifts at this point, a demographic pressure uplift for the next 2 financial years, and an assumption that removal of a temporary budget adjustment for the joint loan equipment store will not be achievable at this stage. It should be noted that work is ongoing in relation to demographic pressure data, and these figures will be updated in the next paper based on the outcome of that work. Demographic pressure over the coming years is unlikely to be manageable without significant system change or additional funding. The net pressures for children and families is shown at 4.33. This was the known figures at the time of writing the report. However, the Closer to Home Board have since met, and there has been a significant amount of work carried out in relation to mitigating plans, which has reduced the overall 5-year pressure to below £1 million. Discussions with Falkirk Council will continue in relation to the incorporation of these budgets into the IJB financial plan once the integration scheme is signed, and an update will be included in the next report. Thematic reviews in relation to partnership funds are underway with the intention that these will remain within recurring budgets moving forward. The Finance Oversight Group continue to meet, and work is underway to review existing savings, identify solutions to close the medium-term gap. Members will be updated on progress at planned IJB budget development sessions, and the lessons learned exercise in relation to last year's budget process has been carried out, and findings are being analysed at the moment and will be incorporated into next steps. Details of these updates will be included in the December report. Timelines are set in the budget strategy are shown at 4.44. It is expected at this stage that the consultation timeline will not start in November, as work is still underway in relation to development of proposals. Again, we will keep members informed of progress at development sessions and next meeting. Risks are set out in section 5, with the main areas in relation to ongoing demand for care and support at home, long-term care placements, the National Care Home contract negotiations, which become increasingly difficult year on year, provider pressures and pay awards. The Primary Care Improvement Programme is currently overcommitted and being addressed via one-off reserves. This is not a sustainable position, and work is underway to bring forward options to address this overcommitment moving forward. No pressures are included in current assumptions for PSIP at this stage. A business case in relation to the Shift in the Balance of Care project is currently being prepared to request that the funding is made recurring to ensure continuation of the discharge to assess approach which has been undertaken this financial year. In summary, the position is extremely challenging, and significant system change and additional funding will be required to ensure financial sustainability. This is a national issue, with Chief Officers and CFOs continuing to highlight the challenges to Scottish Government. Finance remains recorded as very high in our strategic risk register, and it is unlikely that this will be able to be lowered given the challenges highlighted. Members are asked to note the funding pressures set out in the paper and risks identified at section 5, and the actions required to bring forward the 26/7 business case and medium-term financial plan. And I'm happy to take questions on the paper. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marie. It's a very clear paper, as always. There are a whole number of moving parts, to use your favourite phrase, but it's good that we have that update and know where we are in terms of the process of pulling the business case together. Are there questions or comments from members? David?
From a service user's perspective, are we going to lose any service, valued service that we currently get as a consequence of the financial saving?
So at the moment, we're doing the work on bringing forward proposals, David. So part of that is about reviewing what we've already agreed this financial year and bringing forward additional proposals. Now, the intention would be to try and minimise that, but I think it would be really difficult to say that there would be no impact. But we will carry out equalities impact assessments for each of the proposals that will be brought forward, and that will be shared with members as we bring those proposals forward. Obviously, the intention is that we use the resources we have in the best way possible to make sure that there's equitable care across the people of Falkirk, and that's absolutely the intention. But I think with the level of challenge and the level of the gap, it would be difficult to say that there will be no impact, but any impact will be assessed as part of any proposals that are brought forward.
Just as a supplementary, how will we handle that communication process of various services, with the population across Falkirk?
So we'll have a budget consultation process that we'll carry out. So any proposals that are brought forward. So last year, for example, we had a number of adjustments that were simply budget adjustments, removing of, adjusting budgets for underspends and things. But anything that affects the people of Falkirk or service users would be part of a wider budget consultation. So that would go live, and it would be live for 6 weeks period, and we would promote that as widely as possible and engage as many groups as possible in that, and that will be shared by IGB members as well. And we would welcome your input into any areas that you feel we should be sharing that we haven't done in the past. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Devine, can I bring you in?
Sorry, I've had a wee bit of technical problems again this morning. So Gail kind of touched on it in the Chief Officer's report, but given the time of year that we're in, with the winter pressures, what kind of implication is that going to have on the budget, and are we prepared for that?
So I suppose the next paper that we're going to look at, Councillor Devine, thanks for your question. The next paper we're going to look at is the in-year projections for the budgets. So we've actually included a 5% increase around winter pressures, and that equates to £1.8 million of additional expenditure. So that's been included in projections as we've brought them forward throughout the year. So that's the amount that it includes, but it's a 5% increase over the winter months, and for that continuing. Hope that helps.
Alison.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back to the point about the budget consultation, and given some of the lessons learned from this year and the timing of this, will we have sufficient information to be able to have the clarity and specificity to be able to make sure that we don't run into some of the same issues that we ran into this year? And how do we intend to make sure that we get the right steer from our local communities out of that consultation?
Thanks, Alison, for that question. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's aware of some of the challenges that we've had around some of the decisions for this year's financial plan. So we've approached that. We've done a lessons learned exercise where we've actually sent out questionnaires to IGB members, to senior management, to staff members as well, to look at any comments they may have had around the consultation process. Caroline's also done a bit of a deep dive on the lessons from the tickets information. So we're going to bring them into the process and absolutely let that inform the consultation processes as we move forward. So that will be open for 6 weeks. But again, we're looking at, are there any other areas where, any other areas we can consult that we haven't done in the past? It's making sure that it's as wide reaching as possible. And again, it will maybe depend on some of those proposals that might be brought forward, how we target those. But I suspect that for the longer term, some of those ideas will be more high level reviews potentially. So there's nothing, there might not be specifics around those at this point in time. So it's about making sure that we share it as widely as possible through carers groups, through service users, and through IGB members, etc., and members of the community. So our engagement team are working on that at the moment and bringing forward those lessons learned. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments from members? Nope. So the recommendation then is that we note the funding pressures, note the risks identified, and the actions required to bring forward the 26-27 business case and medium-term financial plan. Can we agree that? Thank you. Move on then to item 7, which is the budget monitoring report for 25-26.
Thank you, Chair. This paper is the position based on projections prepared at month 5 to the end of August. The overall forecast for integrated services is an overspend of 6.3 million at this stage. Social care is projected to overspend by 7.2 million, and this is offset by an underspend on the health side of the IJB budget of £1 million. Set aside budgets for large hospital services is currently projected to overspend by 5.3 million, and it is assumed in the paper that this will be funded by NHS Forth Valley as in previous years. The budget set for this financial year included assumed contributions from partners totalling 3.962 million, which it is anticipated will be required in full at this stage, along with use of 2.3 of contingency reserves. The reserves position is shown in detail in Appendix 5. Earmarked reserves of 13.3 million and contingency reserves of 2.4 million were held at the start of the financial year. There are currently commitments of 12.8 million against the earmarked reserves, with an expected remaining service pressures reserve of 670,000 at this stage. And based on current projections, and it is anticipated that we'll require to draw the contingency reserve in full at this point. The main areas of variance within social care are as follows. Care and support at home are expected to overspend by 2.3 million. 6.3 million of an overspend relates to our external services, with the projection rising since last reported due to increasing hours and an assumption that an efficiency agreed will not be achieved in full due to a delay in review teamwork. That 5% increased hours assumptions is also included in projections, which Councillor Devine has already mentioned this morning. This overspend is offset by an underspend of £4 million in the in-house service due to the number of vacancies pending the care at home redesign work. The MEX service currently has a projected overspend of 300,000, driven by temporary staffing and agency spend. In-house residential care is projected to overspend by £1 million despite additional funds being added this financial year. Control of agency spend is continuing in this area where possible, and the service will be subject to review as part of the bedded care review agreed as part of the medium-term financial plan in March. External residential care is projected to overspend by 993,000 at this stage. Resource allocation panels remain in place in relation to residential care and care and support at home to ensure appropriate scrutiny and control in these areas. Housing with care has a projected overspend of 235,000, including an assumed shortfall for this year and the agreed changes in that area. An underspend is currently projected in day services, which is contributing to reducing the overall overspend position. Integrated NHS services have projected underspend at this stage of £1 million. The underspend relates mainly to vacancies throughout services, offset by overspends in complex care provision of 280,000 and within primary care prescribing of 1.2 million. A number of efficiencies are still progressing within the prescribing budget, with a programme of improvements planned. These will continue to be incorporated into the projections as the year progresses and as any new savings emerge. Savings of 11.5 million were agreed for this financial year, and it is currently anticipated that 1.2 million will not be achievable, including care and support at home review reductions, as already mentioned, commissioning reductions, removal of long-term vacancies, and charging for respite care. Delivery of transformation proposals remains a risk to the financial position. Continued resource and focus will be required to deliver and fully implement the programme. Risks to the position are set out as Section 7, with many similar to those set out in the budget paper. As previously mentioned, delivery of the efficiency programme is a real risk to the position. Demand for care and support at home, outstanding job evaluations, volatility of prescribing costs, and primary care improvement programme commitments and pay award funding. Contingency reserves are expected to significantly reduce, which reduces our ability to maintain our agreed level in line with our reserves policy and to pump prime any future spend or spend to save initiatives. In summary, the projected overspend of 6.2 million on integrated services is currently manageable within reserves and partner risk share provisions. However, the use of one-off funds to manage the continuing overspend position is not sustainable. As set out in the budget paper, future demand is unlikely to be manageable without significant system change or additional funding. A significant amount of IJBs are in a similar position, with many in a position of holding no contingency reserves at this stage. Members are asked to note the current projected position for integrated budgets and set-aside services. They're asked to note the non-recurring reserves position set out in Appendix 5, and also authorise the Chief Officer to issue revised directions to Falkirk Council and NHS Forth Valley, as per the directions provided at Appendix 6. And I'm happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marie. Not a good position, as we know, and it is worrying that we are pretty much having to wipe out the entire reserves to break even, which leaves us in potential difficulties in future years. I guess that's the position we're in. Worrying as it is. Okay, can I open it up for questions or comments, David?
I'll go first. Okay. So two questions about the outstanding risks. So we mentioned two things. First of all, one, that the forecasts are based on outstanding savings to be delivered. So the first question is, what is your confidence in those savings? So have we got additional risk that may still be realised there? And the second one is about the increasing health and care demand that may still come through. How much of that is already factored in, and how much additional risk do you think is still there? So effectively, is this a worst case position or a realistic position, or somewhere in between?
Thanks, Alison, for that. So around the additional risks around the savings, so we have a programme of efficiencies, obviously, that we're monitoring. We have got a strategic planning and transformation board where that is brought each month to monitor. So there's a programme around that to make sure that there's key milestones that are, identified leads around each of those savings. The assessment that's in the paper right now is the realistic assessment based on the latest information to that board. I will continue to update that according to the updates that come to the transformation board. So at the moment, that's the realistic position, I would say, but there is still a risk. It's capacity to deliver those transformations is always an issue as well. Although the management structure is settling and we're getting other posts in place, that's a good thing. But it's that we're generating so much activity due to the financial challenges. It is a challenge to deliver the efficiencies. But that board keeps oversight of that, and will continue to update the projections based on the latest information we're getting through the board. Around the additional risks and whether this is at this point in time, I would say the risks that we've got in there around what you mentioned, winter planning. So yeah, we've built in a 5% increase for winter planning for this financial year. That work that we're doing for the budget paper based on the updated demographic pressure and the data behind that will inform that position. So for this year, at this point, we've built in what we think is realistic. For future years, that demographic pressure work will certainly inform that position. So it may be a higher risk around the medium-term financial plan rather than the in-year position. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, David, can I bring you in now, and then Sharon?
Thanks, Gordon. Just a couple of questions. I understand that we're in a flashing red light situation. It does cause me considerable concern on how we actually get out of that. And I can see varying between budgets to make things balance. It's just a personal thing. I don't like the use. I understand the use because I've used it myself of assumptions, which is an accountancy term if you want. But are we confident that these assumptions will actually come to fruition? Absolutely, given potential overspends in health and potential overspends in the council area. Which brings me to a key question. Given the level of service overspend, are we confident at an operational level they're being managed properly?
Thanks. So around yeah, absolutely, as a concerning position, and a high number of IJBs are in a similar position. Obviously, what happens is if we can't manage that, the burden falls to the partners through the integration scheme. So those discussions would have to continue with our partners. Around the assumptions at the moment, I think the assumptions that I've included right now are realistic. I know you're just mentioning assumptions as an accountancy term. It is, we base the current projections on the latest information that we have from partners' finance teams and the work that they're doing with the managers. Around managing the overspend position, At the moment, obviously we've had the shift in the balance of care programme ongoing this year as well. So we're managing the demand within that overall setting as well. We've got resource allocation panels in place which look at the risks around allocating a set number of hours for care and support at home each week. We've got a set number of placements that we can place for residential care. So at the moment we're keeping that at a static level. So it's, you know, if there are positions ending in long-term care, they're then progressed again. So it's a 1-for-1 position at the moment. So it's staying static. There are mechanisms that we can use to manage spend, but we would bring forward a recovery plan. If that position worsens any, we would be bringing forward a recovery plan next IGB around measures that we can take to bring down that spend. Because obviously at the moment our partners would expect us to bring forward a recovery plan if it was going to go higher than that risk share that they are setting out at the moment.
Okay, Sharon.
Hello, thank you. Just on the anticipated cost for the home care services of the spend, just little clarification, because it was what was forecasted is obviously gone up than previously planned. Going forward in the 5-year plan, because the shifting balance of care will mean that most of the care costs will be increased. Is this increase risks and being factored going forward?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The care at home projections are rising, Sharon, and we are seeing that. So one of the reasons for that is that when we set the limits around care and support at home packages, the number of packages ending were higher at that point in time. So what's happened is that's slowed down. So that's probably partly to do with it. We set those limits during the winter period, so the number of packages ending were higher, and we set those limits. Those limits haven't changed, but the number of packages ending has reduced. So it means that the hours are starting to creep up, absolutely. Around shifting the balance of care, the additional packages of care that related to the shifting the balance of care project, so we rapidly discharged a number of people, over 30 people from the hospital at that point. The funding for that has come from NHS Forth Valley, so they identified over £2 million that we could use to fund those additional packages in year. So any addition in relation to the Shifting the Balance of Care project has been funded. We're actually working in that business case at the moment to make that funding recurring so that we can keep those additional packages in the community, and that funding would be passed over from NHS Forth Valley moving forward if that business case is approved by IGB and the NHS board. But we're currently working on that business case at the moment. I hope that helps. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Nope, I'm not seeing anyone. So the recommendations then are that we note the current position for the budgets, we note the recurring reserves position as set out in Appendix 5, and we authorise the Chief Officer to issue the directions as set out in Appendix 6. Can we agree those recommendations? Yeah, okay, thank you. Item 8 is the Independent Advocacy Plan for 25-29. We have Gemma with us to present this one.
Okay, good morning everybody. Thank you for having me along this morning. For those of you that have not met before, I'm a social work team manager within the partnership. I've been for 6 years and my role is Adult Support and Protection Lead Officer. So we're bringing the Independent Advocacy Plan to you this morning. And I suppose just relevant to my introduction and my role is I'm the chair of the Amiga group, which is the Oversight, Management and Evaluation group, who oversee our plan for independent advocacy and work really closely with our commissioned provider. I suppose so today really looking for your approval of the plan that you can see set out in your papers. There has been some updates, as you might expect, since then. So it noted 1.4 in your report that retendering was underway. Forth Valley Advocacy have been awarded the contract for the next 4 years since this report was drafted. I'm just going to provide a wee bit of an overview about the key areas and what we're hoping to achieve through the plan. But I suppose I thought it was maybe worthwhile making a distinction before I did that. So when we're thinking about advocacy skills, it's something that certainly, they're core to social work skills. It's one of the core things that we do around challenging, recognising power and imbalances, inequality, and really trying to promote people's human rights so that everybody within Falkirk are enjoying the same human rights across the piece. So alongside our partners across all the different sectors, health, third sectors and partners, we're advocating in our work on a daily basis and really looking to intervene and support people. So it's core to what we do every day. What we're really setting out and what we recognise is that there's times when that advocacy and supporting people whose voice is maybe less strong or find it more difficult to have their voice heard, that it's important that that's independent and that it's an independent provider who does that. So that's really what this plan is about, those times when adults within our communities would benefit from independent advocacy. So we've consulted when we've developed the plan. We'll be looking to do that. That'll be a core part of what we do. That'll evolve. It's a fluid plan and something that we'll be looking to do through the Amiga group. So there's been some good consultation and meeting with different groups of people who we think are more likely to use independent advocacy. We've really tried to align what we're looking to achieve over the next 4 years with the partnerships objectives. So you'll see within the plan there that going across the 4 key areas that I'm not going to go through them in detail. You have them there, but in terms of accessible care, we really want a once for Falkirk approach, that we're identifying lots of different opportunities where somebody would benefit from independent advocacy. In times gone by, it's set out in the legislation, as you'll see within the report there. So Adult Support and Protection Act, the Mental Health Act and Adults with Incapacity Act, we would be focused on ensuring people had access to independent advocacy when they were subject to interventions or measures under these pieces of legislation. But we're really looking to develop what we're calling our non-statutory advocacy. So identifying other times and other opportunities when people would benefit from access to independent advocacy. When we're thinking about early intervention and prevention, we're looking to think right from the first point when we're screening maybe referrals or people are coming into touch with our service, that we're thinking about independent advocacy and whether that might be something that would be relevant. And you can see here around early intervention and prevention, we're going to have a focus on long-term health conditions, mental health, substance use, and neglect and self-neglect. In my own area of work, when we're thinking about adult support and protection, self-neglect is something that we've been seen on the increase. So we're looking to get out into communities and really think about areas of poverty and deprivation as well, where people might not have as much power, might not have as much resource in their voices. There's more risk that their voice and rights aren't upheld, or we don't support them to fully enjoy those full human rights. We're also thinking about how do we, around community care services, how do we sort of recognise when maybe people are repeatedly attending maybe our acute services, where there's maybe unplanned admissions, so recognising those opportunities as well. And lastly, we're wanting to have a real focus on carer support, and we actually started some of that work on Monday. So the ladies at the back of the room there invited me along to the Carers Voice on Monday, and it was very brief, but it was the start that we had the Chief Executive Officer, Jack, came along from Independent Advocacy and really just sort of planted the seed and raised more awareness around independent advocacy with our carers who were in attendance. And we're planning to have longer sessions and really increase their awareness of independent advocacy, both for themselves, but for the people who they care for as well. So as you might tell just from me speaking about it, I'm really passionate about this and excited about leading on the plan and managing the oversight group. It's just a really important piece of work. So where are we just now? The plan, we're really looking to implement this. It's over the span of the tender, over the 4 years. We've got some outcomes that we really want to focus on linked to the health and social care standards. I talked about the Amiga group, but we'll be working closely with other oversight groups, including our alcohol and drug partnership, our mental health and learning disability oversight group, and our adult protection committee. What's really first for us is you'll see in the back page of the plan there, where it's just really different colours around the implementation plan, is the first thing is we really want to fine tune our activities. So be more specific about what we're going to do. We've set it out in those broad areas in the plan, but we've actually scheduled a development afternoon where the Amiga group and we're going to invite in some other partners to that, where we're going to meet on the afternoon of the 24th of November and get together for a development afternoon to really think, right, what specifically do we want to do? When do we want to do it? And that'll really help us with that phase one of fine-tuning the activities. So happy to take any questions about that.
Thanks, Gemma. It's a really clear report. I couldn't agree more about the importance of advocacy in a human rights approach. So great to hear you mention that. Other comments or questions from members? Roger.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Like you, Gemma, you know that I'm very passionate for advocacy, and it's been quite a number of years. It's been very clear that the service in Falkirk has been a lot less broad than service in other areas around us, working with my colleagues, the MHO colleagues in other areas. So it's good to see that we're trying to fill the gaps there with the advocacy support. I'm just, could I just check, though, the funding for the advocacy isn't increasing, even though the what services are going to be provided is increasing, and how's that going to, how are you going to meet that circle?
So we think that there's some duplication in the system. So we're looking to improve the data that we're getting into the Amiga group, because at the moment it's really just letting us know, what are the percentage across those 3 pieces of legislation that I mentioned, and non-statutory advocacy, and also prison advocacy as well. But we're looking to speak to more groups because we think that there's duplication, certainly with Mental Health Act referrals, and the provider are letting us know that is happening. So sometimes there can be a referral from a mental health officer, a nurse on a ward, sometimes a nurse on the ward, maybe in an early shift and on a back shift. So we're looking to, and obviously that then is screening time when it's received at the service. So we're looking to see how there can be better communication across that system, so that we can get the right referral at the right time as well, because we think there's maybe some wastage and duplication across that system. And if we're looking at early intervention and prevention, we might not end up in situations where we are looking at using the law and more formal measures if we're actually identifying earlier opportunities for support, independent advocacy, where people might not need it further down the line. So we'll be looking at it closely, but we think there's a bit of shift across the different areas where if we get the non-statutory advocacy right and the engagement, that we might sort of balance it across where it's been used.
Thanks. I mean, it doesn't allay my concerns. I'd have to say that this is a service which is still already stretched, and some people need advocacy there and then pretty well if to allow them to exercise their rights, particularly under the Mental Health Act, and sometimes there's quite a delay already. So it's quite concerning for me that if it does get diluted.
Yeah, well, I suppose we'll have a look at that. That's not what the data tells us. What's been reported into the oversight group, referral to response is actually very timely at the moment. But I think that's what we're going to do if we enhance the data and really mature that, what's coming into the oversight group, we can understand more and think about where there's maybe extra resource that we can think about some extra work with people who are maybe not receiving the service at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Alison.
And that is a perfect lead on to my questions, actually. So I'm completely supportive of this. So please take these questions in the way that they're meant, which is really about two things. One, which is obviously you've heard the budget conversations that we had, and that every pound we've got to make sure is delivering a really great result for our people in the community. But also a piece that says when we're doing great things, we want to be able to prove we're doing great things and celebrate that and communicate it. So it comes back to this piece about how do we prove that this is working, and how do we show that work. And it was great to see that you've got definition of KPIs in early 2026, and you've also got some work there about showing those outcomes. And I think coming back to your point, my question is really about where is that oversight of it? How do we know that it's working? How do we know that that extension of that work is actually just addressing some of those concerns? It is not causing a problem, but it is also delivering some of those outcomes that you expect it to deliver in making better outcomes. And what is the governance that sits around that outside of the Amiga group?
Yeah. So I was thinking as you were talking about the earlier agenda items and communication that that's a time where independent advocacy and it being somebody who's not related to any services would have a role in supporting people. So we're looking to and we'll be thinking about this. Will be one of the core things we think about within that development afternoon around both gathering quantitative information, but that qualitative information from people about the impact that the service and the support has had on them as an individual. So we'll be gathering that and deciding the frequency and how often we want to do that, so that we can capture those outcomes from people who've experienced and benefited from the service. And feeding that in. And the other ways that we can do it as well is through our case file audit and our self-evaluation through adult support and protection, and other work that we're doing. So it'll be through our file reading and our case file audit, which are being reported in through our clinical care governance and adult protection committee as well.
And I guess my ask is not just to look at the individual outcome, but to look at the system outcome as well, so we can see what that wider impact is of the advocacy services, not just the individual impact. And I think it would be good to bring a report back to this committee about the impact of this work.
Okay, we can have a chat offline about the most appropriate time to do that. But yeah, it certainly seems like a good idea. Councillor Devine, can I bring you in, please?
Well, my question's already been asked, but I just wanted to say that I really welcomed this report, and it's good to see and hear Gemma talking about doing that level of feedback and collating that evidence going forward. So I just wanted to say that I welcome this report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any hands, real or virtual. Okay, thank you. The recommendation then is that we approve the plan as set out in Appendix 1 to the report. Are we happy to approve? Okay, thanks so much, Gemma.
Okay, lovely, thanks.
Can we move on then to item 9, which is the IJB governance update? Marie.
Thank you, Chair. This paper's providing an update on governance items for the IJB. The proposed meeting schedule for 2026 is shown at Appendix 1 for the PAC and IJB meetings 6 times per year. I just want to note that a revised appendix was issued by Carly to all members. And just to note that in the original appendix, the dates for PAC of 24th of April 26 and for the IJB of the 8th of the 5th 26 were invalid and have been removed from that revised appendix. So we're just looking for the board to approve those dates. The IJB are also asked to welcome Alison Japp as the new NHS nominated member following the decision by the NHS board on the 30th of September 2025. A Deputy Carers representative, Amanda Winters, has been nominated by the Carers Voices group, and the IJB are being asked to approve this nomination. And I think Amanda's with us at the back of the room today as well, so it's nice to see her today. It is also noted that Ian Dixon, our third sector representative, reaches the end of his 3-year term in November. The IJB are asked to approve the recruitment of a third sector representative via CVS Falkirk, including identification of a deputy representative. The IJB standing orders do not prohibit a member putting themselves forward for a further term, and recommendations following the recruitment process will be brought back to the IJB for consideration. The PAC committee currently has 2 vacancies for non-voting members, following a request for expressions of interest, Ian Dixon and David McNiven. And I do apologise, David, in the body of the report, it names you as David Niven. That would have been quite a different membership if that had been the case. I apologise. So Ian Dixon and David McNiven have both expressed an interest, and the IJB are being asked to approve their appointment today. And finally, the PAC terms of reference have been reviewed as agreed 6 months following the inception of the new committee. The revised terms of reference is attached to Appendix 2, with the changes shown as track changes in the document. The main areas of change relate to removal of oversight of the budget process, as this is actually done via the IJB and not the PAC committee, so that sentence has been removed, and that development sessions for the PAC members will be incorporated into IJB development sessions, with additional sessions added if required during the year. Just also for noting, there is still, and it's not on the report, but there is still a voting member vacancy on the PAC committee, and we'll bring back a recommendation in December for that one as well. Thanks, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Marie. Number of issues there. Any questions or comments, folks? Roger.
Can I just ask, there's 7 PAC committee meetings and 7 IJB meetings next year planned. Is that going to be there's 7 on this?
No, sorry, that was what I updated at the start when I was presenting. There was 7 on the appendix. There's a revised appendix been issued, and I've noted the dates there. Apologies, that was their fault. Thanks, Roger.
Yeah, so the proposal is 6 meetings of the IJB and 6 of committee. Any other questions or comments, folks? Okay, so just to run through the recommendations, we're being asked to agree the meeting dates, the 6 of each, not 7. Welcome Alison, approve Amanda as the Deputy Carers Rep, agree the process for the recruitment of the third sector rep and deputy, agree the additional non-voting members of PAC, and approve slightly updated PAC terms of reference. Is that agreed? Yeah. Okay, thank you. We're getting through this fairly quickly today. So item 10 is the Ministerial Steering Group review. That's you again.
Thank you, Chair. This paper provides an update on the IJB's self-evaluation against the Ministerial Strategic Group recommendations from the Audit Scotland report on integration in 2018. So the MSG review of progress of health and social care integration was published back in 2018, identifying 6 areas of work to be progressed, which are set out at 4.3 in the report. An initial self-evaluation was carried out by the IGB in 2019 and subsequently updated in November 2023. Appendix 1 shows the categories and ratings from both of these assessments at that time. In order to conclude the work, a final workshop was held with IGB members and senior management to review areas which were previously assessed as not established. The updated evaluation position is shown at Appendix 2, with only 2 areas still considered partly established. And these are related to delegated hospital budgets and set-aside requirements must be fully implemented, and statutory partners make sure appropriate support is given to IGB Section 95 officers. Both of these items will continue to be monitored via the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee regular governance statement improvement actions report. And Scottish Government have confirmed that there are no further reporting requirements in this regard. In relation to these actions, therefore, no further reports will be brought after this one. Members are asked to note the updated evaluation position and note the work has now concluded, and note that senior management will continue to recognise the guiding principles of integration work towards improved outcomes and sustainability. Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, thanks, Brigitte. Are there any questions? Alison?
And it's just really one about the Section 95 officer partially establishment point. And it's just to check what does it mean in practice, and are there any risks to financial governance or decision making as a result of this?
So the support for from statutory partners for the IGB Section 95 officers, so I suppose as our integration scheme will be signed off soon, that includes arrangements for appropriate financial support for the partnership. Now, I don't think any CFO in Scotland would say there's plenty of finance support around. So, but we're working closely with our partners to make sure that leads are getting the information they need around financial projections and to allow them to manage their budget. So I'll be continuing to do that work. And we're looking to bring forward some more updated financial regulations training and budget management training in due course as well.
Okay, thank you. David?
It's really a supplementary to your point. I was interested to read partially established in terms of what does that mean? 5%, 20%, 90%?
So there were set criteria and set statements around the strategic group action. So there were set statements which would say here would be the position you are in to agree that you are partly established or well established. So I'm just looking to see if we've got that.
Sorry, it's maybe inappropriate to ask at the board if it's held elsewhere.
It's absolutely fine. It'll be in the appendix, and I can certainly send you out the detailed information around that assessment. There's more detailed information around the appendices, so I can certainly share that with you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Anything else, folks? We move to the recommendations. So we're being asked to note the final evaluation position, note that this work is now effectively concluded, and note that, of course, senior management will continue to recognise the guiding principles of integration as we move forward. We agree with those recommendations? Okay, thank you. Item 11 then is principles and governance of hosted services. Tom, I think you're going to introduce this one for us.
I am, yes. Thank you, Chair. And firstly, apologies for not being there to present today. And I understand you also can't see me either, but again, apologies for that. Members will be familiar with the core construct of the IGB, in which each IGB receives delegated functions from NHS boards and local authorities and oversees these within the delivery auspices of the Health and Social Care Partnership. However, at the time of establishing the IGB arrangements across the country, there was a recognition that to subdivide all services to individual IGBs was not necessarily the most effective or efficient arrangements. So there required to be a facility for some services to be managed on a regional or cross-partnership basis rather than by each individual IGB. So, sorry, apologies. So hosted service, I'm trying to reframe it back in my head there. Sorry, I get distracted by that. There was the phone ringing. So hosted services are designed to formally enable this within Public Bodies Act. Such arrangements can unlock scale and consistency benefits as well as business efficiencies in relation to transparent finance, robust clinical care governance, and a single system performance and engagement approach. These arrangements, it's worth noting, can apply to both services that are statutorily required to be delegated and those optionally delegated. So the Public Bodies Act requires that governance arrangements for hosted service be clearly set out in each integration scheme. At the point of commencement of the IGB within Falkirk, there was no established hosted services, so they were not detailed within the original integration scheme. Since 2016, within Forth Valley, there's a number of hosted services, and these are detailed in the report. And these have been specifically articulated in the current draft integration scheme, which, as members will know, is sitting at the moment between ministers and ourselves in terms of going back and forward and resolving everything. So there's a few listed in relation to the paper. There's also, apart from the main ones that are there, a few other smaller services, such as nursing, bowel and bladder services, etc. So this paper intends to set out a proposed approach to group the principles of approach to hosted services into 4 key themes. These will be developed further through a joint session with senior management teams of Falkirk and Clackmannanshire and a planned joint IGB development session in early 2016. And you'll see some detail within the paper, but effectively they are around about governance and accountability, operational clarity, finance and risk, and strategic alignment and engagement. And the aim of it all is effectively to ensure clarity of roles and responsibilities, strengthen the governance and accountability, and deliver consistent, efficient and high quality services across the board area. At this stage, the IJB is being asked to note these outlined principles relating to hosted services, note the joint IGB session, which will be scheduled to examine these principles in detail across the 2 IGB areas and assure an accord there, and also request the Chief Officer to provide an annual progress report on hosted services for consideration by the IGB. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. That's clear, and this has been an area that has fallen a little between the kind of the 2 IGBs in governance terms. So it's good to have a process now in place to tidy things up and make sure that we have that governance correct. Other questions or comments, folks? Roger?
Yes, I always feel when looking at hosted services, it'll be useful to be a bit clearer about the term specialist mental health services and learning disability services, because for those who are not working in those services, where the boundary between generic services and specialist services is can be unclear. So would it be possible in generally to just make that point clearer?
May I come back, Chair? Yes, actually, and that's a good point, Roger, because I think that's one of the core intentions here is to, in some respects, you've got a legislative principles that are around about this, but then you've got the kind of operating reality and the understanding and clarity that everyone has about who's doing what and where and what's the jurisdiction of that and how can everybody be sure about the strategic direction and any decisions that need to be taken. So yes, in us having these workshops that we intend to have, we would want to kind of flush through in each individual instance. Are we absolutely clear about what we mean there? And are we absolutely clear about where the various jurisdictions lie and the arrangements to oversee that? So it's intended to scoop all of those things and into those processes and then come back ultimately to the IGBs to say, are we all happy with what we've agreed?
Okay, thanks. No, it's a good point, being specific about that. Stephen?
Thanks, Gordon. Yeah. Just a slight follow-up to that, and Section 5 implications. There are no direct financial implications with this proposal, but I think anything that we do at the moment has financial implications. So I suppose, how do we? I get what we're doing, streamline services, delivery of those services, but how can we be assured that we are managing the finances relating to those services that are delivered. Thank you.
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, if I may, yes. So, of course, in relation to this paper, the question being asked there is in relation to what is on this paper and what is being proposed in this paper. There are no direct financial consequences relating to the establishment of a set of principles. But you're absolutely right. It would be irrational to consider that there are no implications in anything we do. But actually, that reinforces the point of doing this process, because again, it's about absolutely establishing across both IJBs that we're clear about where what we do fits in a broader range of pressures and ambitions. And if one IJB feels that the direction that we're going in with one particular service is having an adverse consequence on them, but they don't at the moment feel they have any controls there, this is that opportunity to clarify that. And there is a specific reference into the principles that we're identifying here around about that financial aspect of that. So hopefully that reassures you a little bit.
Okay, so there are a few specifics that we'll perhaps come back to as we go through the process. But are people happy then with the recommendations that we note the principles in the process and request an annual report on hosted services from the Chief Officer? Okay. Final report then is item 12, the assurance report from the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee. Gail?
Thank you. So this is the standard report that we've recently instigated, providing that assurance and that read across between what's discussed at Performance Audit and Assurance Committee into IJB. So the committee recently met and discussed a number of items, and they're listed in the report. And at the end of the committee, we asked the usual question in terms of did the committee feel assured by the information they had received on that day. So the committee did agree that it did feel assured the information provided was full and detailed. They requested a number of items to be highlighted to the IJB. So in relation to the IJB strategic risk register, there was still remaining concern about the very high risk rating regarding financial sustainability. But they noted the progress that's underway, and I think that's being considered today in terms of the two finance reports today as well. And we'll continue to provide a key focus around finance linking it into that key strategic risk. In relation to the review of social work governance and assurance across Scotland report, there were a number of key messages which colleagues can find in the report, and the committee discussed the strength of social work governance in Falkirk and recognised that the transfer of children's and justice social work into the Health and Social Care Partnership will continue to strengthen this further. In relation to the update on the Caledonia and Dollar Park Dementia Services report, the committee received an in-depth overview of the service, including a video which captured feedback from service users and noted the progress and outcomes achieved. The committee praised the Dollar Park Dementia Service for receiving very good grades across the 3 areas inspected by the Care Inspectorate. And in relation to the PAC terms of reference, the committee discussed and agreed amendments to the terms of reference, which have today been approved by IJB. And in relation to the Clinical and Care Governance Management Group, which was held in private, the committee had a full discussion around a range of clinical and care governance areas, with assurance provided that opportunities for improvement are considered from an early stage once the service becomes aware of the issues and that actions are being undertaken around waiting times in prisons for health services. Okay, so happy. I don't know if any members who are at the committee might want to add to that, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Open it up for comment and questions. It's relatively straightforward. Most of those issues have already been discussed and agreed on today's agenda. So are we happy then with the recommendations when I find them, which are that we note the assurance report from that committee meeting? Okay, thank you. Brings us to the end of this morning's agenda. Relatively short meeting compared to some we've had, but still some important items on the agenda and some good discussions. So thanks as always to everyone who's presented and everyone who's attended this morning. And we'll see you all in December.
Thanks. Bye.